When you ask a Filipino to name the country's heroes, typical answers would include the usual rosters found in history books: Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, and perhaps the hero casts featured in the biopic film Heneral Luna that made many young Pinoys acknowledge that the likes of Apolinario, Mabini and Antonio Luna did exist one time in the past. So now we name at least 10 of these unsung heroes who, by their own rights, are on equal footing with such big names as Rizal and Bonifacio in the aspect of heroism. 1. Captain Jose Cabalfin Calugas, first Filipino to be awarded the World War II Medal of Honor. Born in the farming town of Barangay Tagsing in Iloilo, Calugas knew firsthand the importance of fighting for independence. His town was one of the major areas for the resistance movement during the Japanese occupation. He enlisted right away as part of the Philippine Scouts in 1930, where he trained until 1940. On the morning of December 8, 1941, the Scouts learned that they will be deployed to fight against the Japanese. Calugas' unit, the 88th Field Artillery Battalion, was eventually assigned to Bataan. On January 6, 1942, Calugas was going about his duties as the designated mess sergeant that day who prepares the day's meals when he noticed that one of his unit's guns had been silenced and its crew killed. Without second thoughts, he ran the 1,000 yards across the shell-swept area to organize a squad of volunteers who returned Japanese artillery fire. It was even said that he manned a 75mm cannon by himself, destroying 60 advancing opponent vehicles. The battle went on for rest of the afternoon, while Calugas and his squad maintained their positions. During this time, other soldiers had time to dig in and defend the line. It was a victory for the Americans and Filipinos, but months later, Bataan surrendered, and Calugas was one of the men who took part in the Bataan Death March. He was herded with other prisoners at Camp O'Donnell in Tarlac until he was released in January 1943. He was assigned to be a laborer in a Japanese rice mill, but there, he secretly joined a guerrilla unit, 227 Old Bronco. He later participated in the attack against the Japanese garrison at Carangalan. When the Philippines was finally liberated, he was awarded the World War II Medal of Honor, the first Filipino to receive the award. 2. Hadji Butu Abdul Baqui, Sulu Prime Minister, first Muslim senator. There's one figure from Mindanao worth mentioning when it comes to the unification of Christians and Muslims. Hadji Butu Abdul Baqui, a native of Jolo born in 1865, came from a reputable political clan, specifically that of Mantiria Sip, the minister to the Muslim prince of Sumatra. Continuing his family's legacy, the young Butu became prime minister of the Sultan Badruddin II at 16 and thereafter bore the Hadji title. Sultan Badruddin II was a sultan and national hero of Indonesia who established a civil in Jolo in 1884. Hadji Butu was later named senator in December 1915 and was the first Muslim to assume the position. As senator, Hadji Butu sponsored the bill to establish the Philippine Military Academy, Philippine Naval Academy, and even the now optional program, ROTC. He continued his advocacy for the independency of Mindanao and Sulu from 1919 to 1934, asking Muslim Pinoys to support Christian Pinoys for the sake of Philippine freedom. 3. Pascual P. Hicaro, writer, editor, translator, feminist. Pascual P. Hicaro's name and achievements may be overshadowed by that of Marcelo H. Del Pilar and Jose Rizal, but he remains a great Philippine writer and active feminist. He was well-educated and finished Bachelor of Arts at the Liceo de Manila. He co-founded the Jariong Tagalog together with M. H. Del Pilar, founded another publication, the Revista Popular de Filipinas, and edited Pantanabay ng Katoliko and Ang Pligong Tagalog. During the Philippine Revolution, he was captured and deported to Spain and then to Africa, but was later unrecognized for his talent in writing and editing. He arrived back to the Philippines in early 1900s and edited El Grito del Pueblo of the Nacionalista Party and Ang Kapatid ng Bayan. He also translated Rizal's Noli Me Tangere in the vernacular and published Rizal's works in his Dia Filipino publication. 4. Datu Amai Pakpak, Maranao warrior, anti-Spanish. Datu Amai Pakpak aka Datu Akadir may have lost two great battles against the Spanish, but he lived and died a hero for the Muslim cause. He fortified the infamous Kota Marawi aka Camp Amai Pakpak with earth and stone, cannons and guns, and defended it for 4 years until his death in 1895. This was all in an effort to preserve the whole of Lake Lanao's freedom from Spanish rule. He led the battle against the Spanish Governor-General Valeriano Weyler's attack in 1891 and against Governor Ramon Blanco's invasion in 1895, to which he died fighting about 5,000 heavily armed Spanish armies, backed by powerful gunboats attacking the lake settlements. 5. Juan Palares de la Cruz. Leader of the Palares Revolt. Juan de la Cruz was best known as the leader of the Palares Revolt in 1762 to 1765 in Pangasinan. He could very well be the first chop-chop victim in the country, with the various parts of his body cut and displayed in various locations across Pangasinan to instill fear among the people upon his capture in 1765. Palares was aggressively leading protests against the abusive provincial governor Don Joaquin Gamboa and presented their petitions to Father Andres Melendez, the head of the friars in Lingayen. The Spanish had trouble defeating Palares and other uprisings, particularly during the 7 Years' War. However, after signing the Treaty of Paris and the end of the 7 Years' War in 1763, the Spanish was able to successfully end the Palares Revolt with the help of his sister, Simeona, who betrayed Palares over the latter's abuse to her. 6. Simeon Ola y Arboleda. Katipunero from Bicol, anti-American. Simeon Ola, a philosophy student at the University of Nueva Cáceres, was born in Ganabatan, Albay. He became a Katipunero in 1896 and launched guerrilla attacks against the American troops and won battles in several Albay towns like Camalig, Oas, Ligao and Jovelar, which caused his speedy promotion from captain to major. Amidst the death of his cousin Jose Arboleda during the war, Ola regrouped the Filipino soldiers and attacked Oas and Ligao. After which the Americans opted to negotiate for Ola's surrender, granting his men amnesty upon his capture in 1903, becoming the last Filipino general to surrender. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison but was pardoned in 1904 and became municipal president. 7. Panday Pira. First Filipino cannon maker. Panday Pira lived from the late 15th century through the late 16th century in Manila, working as apprentice to a Portuguese blacksmith. He later mastered the art of weapon making, particularly in the design of handmade cannons, which would later prove helpful in the battle against Spanish forces. Panday Pira's handmade cannons were reportedly used by Raja Suleiman in defending Manila against the Spanish invaders headed by Martin de Goiti. The battle ended in favor of the colonizers who sequestered Panday Pira's cannons for their own advantage. A street in Tondo is named in his memorial. 8. Faustino Guillermo. Born in 1860 in Sampaloc, Manila, fought alongside Andres Bonifacio and Emilio Jacinto in San Juan del Monte. He also led many armed rebels in northern Rizal, which the Americans labeled as Diliman Gang. He surrendered to the Americans in 1900 at Malabon and lived in Morong Province aka Rizal Province, but started recruiting Filipino soldiers to continue the fight against the American regime. He was captured in 1901, was jailed for 3 months before he was freed. Guillermo recruited more men and became a vagabond warrior, fighting alongside General Luciano San Miguel as lieutenant colonel in 1902 and as colonel in 1903. Sadly, Guillermo and General San Miguel were surrounded by Philippine scouts in Corral na Bato, Marikina in March 1903, which led to the death of the general. Guillermo escaped but was arrested in June 1903 by the Philippine Constabulary and was sentenced to death over brigandage charges. 9. Dionisio Papa Isio Magbuelas. Pro-Sakata, anti-Spanish, anti-American. Dionisio Magbuelas, popularly known as Papa Isio, led the main resistance against the Spanish and then the Americans in Negros. He and his men, mostly runaway Sakatas, were actively devising skirmishes against the Spaniards and pro-Spanish Filipinos, mostly Hacienderos, since 1896. The Hacienderos tagged Papa Isio and his men as bandits and helped the Guardia Civil catch them. Upon the arrival of the American colonizers, many of the Hacienderos switched allegiance to America and continued their support against Papa Isio and his men. Papa Isio and his men began burning of haciendas, mills and other structures owned by their landlord foes, including those who abused the Sakatas. He remained fighting for the Katipunan cause, independence, despite the establishment of the Malolos government that deals with the Negros Ilustrados and gained the support of cane cutters. However, the bountiful harvest in 1905 that eased the people's poverty and the continued prosperity of haciendas under the American regime caused Papa Isio to lose support. He surrendered 2 years later, was tried and sentenced to death. 10. Trinidad Tecson, mother of Biak na Bato. Her name may sound familiar because of her monikers, Mother of Biak na Bato and Mother of Philippine Red Cross. Trinidad Tecson joined the Katipunan Women chapter when she was already 47 years old. She fought with men side by side in 12 recorded, bloody battles in Bulacan, including the one in Biak na Bato. It was said that whenever she gets wounded, once she started feeling better, she would immediately get back to the field. She earned her name Mother of Biak na Bato when her camp served as the headquarters and hideout for Aguinaldo and his troops. Similar to Tandang Sara, she nursed sick and wounded Katipuneros during this time, which eventually earned her the honor of being named the Mother of Philippine Red Cross. For her loyalty, she was named Commissary of War during the Malolos Republic. When the Spaniards left and the Americans came, she continued to fight under the command of General Gregorio del Pilar. Unfortunately, she was not able to see her country fully liberated at the time of her death on January 28, 1928, at the age of 80. She was buried at the Mausoleum of Veterans at the Manila North Cemetery.